Hello, this is Gary Wilson, and welcome to this week's live Real Estate Investing for Professional Men and Women podcast. And many of you are watching, listening to this recorded, obviously, but we do it live. I do have a special guest today, Dr. Howard Farran, but before I introduce him, just a brief reminder of who we are, who you are, typically professional in your field, often business owner. And we do like to invest in real estate honorably and ethically, so the neighborhood wins, the tenants win if we're renting, and of course, we win as the owner and build long-term passive income for ourselves so that we don't have to work the rest of our lives, and we can use our practice and leverage it in constructive ways. So if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please feel free to do so. It's on any number of 75 different channels, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, iTunes. And also, if you'd like to join the community, simply go to myinvestmentservices.com. Go to members area and check out the community of all of us professionals, and more importantly, the realtors who we've also trained to work with us, so they actually know what it is we need and want. And that's probably the biggest goal in this big end of this rainbow. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Howard Farran, DDS. He has his own practice. He has a podcast, and real neat guy. We have some common connections. So Dr. Farran, welcome aboard. I appreciate you doing this.
Oh, it's an honor to be on your show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm up in Toronto, Ontario, and we just are celebrating Canada Day today. So, my wife's Canadian, I'm American, and we celebrate almost two of everything. So thank you for asking. So, hey, if you don't mind, Dr. Farran, I'm somewhat familiar with you based on your brief introduction to common friends. But for those who don't know you, I want to help you yourself too. If you could just briefly describe, who you are for those who don't know you. There's a lot of people who are business owners I think are going to resonate with our conversation today based on who you are.
I was born in Wichita, Kansas in '62, and my dad owned a half dozen Sonic drive-in franchises. But I fell in love with dentistry. My next door neighbor, Kenny Anderson, was a dentist. So I just became a dentist. What I didn't realize is that when I got out of dental school, watching my dad run Sonic drive-ins, I learned business. So I opened up my dental office. I still have a dental office. I still see patients. I love dentistry, but I recognized way back in '87 that my colleagues didn't have any training in business. So I wrote some books. My book was Uncomplicate Business. And Uncomplicate Business, you only manage three things: people, time, and money. And so it's been my hobby on the side of dentistry is to teach dentists that, they just like a chef. You can love your restaurant, you can love your dental office, but at the end of the day, you got to know business. And you're in the field where 90% of all millionaires around the planet made their money in real estate. And you see dentists renting horrible locations from age 25 to 65 when they could have owned the real estate. My goal is to try to be a leader to convince dentists that instead of just loving dentistry, they need to understand the business of dentistry.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, because I learned this a long time ago too. I've come from a family, but one half the family is entrepreneurial business owners. The other half are strictly W-2 employees, and the other half, the second half, doesn't really understand the first half. So the first half, all of us business owners, we don't have to master one set of skills, which is the practice we're in your case, the practice of dentistry. There's two sets of skills. You're also in the business of being in business, like you just described, your father owning Sonic franchises, so you got to see that firsthand, what that was like. And I can tell you, the dentists who and my best clients mostly have been dentists and engineers and chiropractors, but the ones that actually ran it like a business first, and then the service you're offering is like the tip of the iceberg, always do better. It's just you've got to be the business first. So I'm so glad you said that. You mentioned a few key things here. The fact that your father was an entrepreneur / business owner and owned some franchises, and Sonic's a great franchise, they own two, by the way. If you could key in on maybe what was it that you saw when you were growing up that you witnessed firsthand? Perhaps you worked for your father, participated in the business. Is there one or two or three things you can think of that are critical in your success as being a business owner now?
Well, like my book, Uncomplicate Business, People, Time, and Money, it's, when you go to a restaurant, how the waitress interacts with you, how the waiter, how the maitre d', the hostess with the mostess. Success in owning a dental office, a construction business, is just attracting and retaining great people. The greatest companies, the richest people, don't have a problem with employee turnover. And when you go to a business that's 30 years old and the longest anyone's ever worked there other than the owner is 5 years, there should be so many red flags going off. You should think you're at the United Nations. So it's just attracting great people and keeping them for a really long time. And then money. I mean, you just routinely see business owners that don't know their numbers. Like I raised 4 boys, and going back to when they were born, we'd go into a restaurant and I'd flag the owner over and I would ask him general questions like, what is your food cost? I'm just curious. My dad had Sonics. He ran a 18% labor cost, 31% food cost. What is your food cost here? And if they didn't know, I would tell my boys a year from now, they won't even be open. And now my dental office, 32 years old, there's only 3 restaurants in this area of Phoenix that have been there as long as I have. And those were all 3 people who told me 31 years ago what their food costs were, what their labor costs. I mean, you go on Shark Tank. What is your new patient, your new customer acquisition cost? How much money do you have to spend on internet ads to get one new customer? What is it, $8? And if you get this person for $8, how much money are they going to spend with you? Is it going to be $50? And when people don't know their basic numbers, it's the blind leading the blind, and it never ends well. So it's just trying to get plumbers to take their mind off of plumbing and ask themselves, while you're fixing this sink, who's answering your phone? And you have a different lady answering the phone every 6 months. How is she going to value add, upsell, and get people to get more involved with fixing their plumbing? It's the same with the dental office. It's the same with any business. So just focus on the people, the time, and the money. And then, like say, the reason I came on your show is in the backdrop of that. You know how many of those Sonic franchise owners that were my dad's buddies back in the day, in the that owned their land and Sonic Drive-In? You know how much better, well off they did than the ones that leased a 200-foot wide street entrance, maybe 100 feet back. The people who own the land under those restaurants. I know a dentist in LA that the only reason he retired is because his 40-year-old building had become so valuable. This developer wanted it, bought the whole practice for twice of what he could have sold it for. And then as soon as he sold it to him, they bulldozed the whole thing down and built a high rise. I know another one that's getting that same offer. A friend of mine, Keegan, it's the same thing. He owns a place out in Florida, and they want to tear down his little bungalow and build a high rise. So real estate's kind of a big deal when you figure that in 1900, the planet had 2 billion people. And now it's 2020, it has 8 billion people, and it's headed towards 15 billion people. And when you get twice as many humans living on the same planet, that's still going to be just 8,000 mile wide diameter. Supply and demand tells you that owning a piece of this earth is probably a better idea than leasing or renting. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Famous Mr. Kroc said it perfectly. He said, you know what? A lot of people think McDonald's is in the hamburger business. He says, no, we're in the real estate business. We just sell hamburgers on those street corners.
It's absolutely true. He was a real estate. He would go buy the best corner on First Street in Maine, and if you bought the land for $500,000, he'd put the box on there for $400,000, the equipment on there for $300,000. I met Ray Kroc, and awesome. if he had $1.2 million into it, he'd sell you that as the franchise fee. So now he had no money in his land and building, and then the first 12 and a half cents of every dollar went to McDonald's. And my God, what do they have now? 40,000 McDonald's that on the first of every month pay rent to the home company. It's a real estate business that just happens to sell hamburgers and fries on the side. And by the way, great movie, The Founder. I knew they were gonna not do that movie well, and they did it beyond anybody's expectation. Just a great movie, The Founder. Watch it. His autobiography is great too. But you got to know your business. You got to know your numbers, and if you can't keep your staff, you're not going to keep your customers. So why does your staff quit every year or two? The same way the reason people are leaving you bad reviews on Google and Yelp and what have you. So we're all in the people business. And, you know, treat your spouse, your employees, your customers, your kids, your family, you know, if you treat them all the same, and just do a good job, just be good, work hard, keep your customers, keep your spouse, keep your kids, keep everybody happy. And then given enough time, you're going to make a lot of money.
Yeah, I tell you what, you just said one of the most critical lessons that I learned from my father's side of the family, who were the farmers and merchants going back, you know, a couple hundred years. My grandfather said this perfectly. He said the money's not in the money, the money's in the relationship. And you build a solid relationship that pays you over and over and over and over again for a lifetime, and sometimes generations in his case. And so I appreciate you really bringing that point to the forefront. It's the same lesson we learned in kindergarten. It's true. It's with our families, our friends, and our business relationships. And everything we needed to know from that standpoint we learned in kindergarten. But in any case, so back to your, so I understand you're in Phoenix, which is awesome. I'm going to be out there at the end of the year. But I have some friends out there and colleagues too who are in business. And Mark, have you ever run into Mark Costas before? I think he's
he's a dentist up in Prescott. Great mentor of mine. Great operator. Owns a dozen offices. I mean, he's had me lecture for his group. He's been on my podcast. I've been on his. He's just a great guy.
Yeah. So we had a great conversation the other week, and one of the things I want to ask you about is, you know, as long as you don't mind sharing, I know you neither one of us are, I believe, are attorneys or tax accountants or anything like that. But one of the things I learned early on with a lot of my practitioner clients is we always had them separate the ownership of the building and the land from the ownership of the practice. And it made some probably obvious practical reasons for that, like liability and separation liability and all that. But it also it's like the beginning of a foundation, like the keystone of a corner of a foundation, that when you line that up properly, it allows you to expand and leverage and, you know, buy other buildings or build other practices and own those buildings too. But what has your experience been with that? What have you seen others do as far as those that they do own their own land and building? Are they doing it as a separate entity, separate from the ownership of the practice, like I've seen, or what's your experience there?
Yeah, most dentists like myself, they just take their name. Like my last name's Farran, so you take that backwards, it's Naraf. So I'm Howard Farran, and Farran backwards Naraf. Naraf, you know, when you buy the land and building, you take that total sum and you divide it by 120 months, and now you've got yourself a 12% return on 10 years, and you just you own that separately for all the reasons you said, accounting, legal, tax wise, all that kind of stuff like that, and you own your own land and building. Now some dentists just own their land and building because they're not going to pay rent for 40 years. They want to own and be able to capitalize on the upside of real estate over 4 decades. Which I don't know how that could be a bad idea, no matter where you're at. Mm-hmm. And then some people realize that they actually want to buy a few more properties, because until you scale big enough to where you can have a full-time employee, then it's really hard to run that business. Ray Kroc is a great example. When he started McDonald's, every hamburger company in America was owned by mom and pop. And it also took you 1 hour to eat a hamburger. I mean, you go in there and you'd have to wait to be seated, then they take your order, then they make your burger and fries, and it took you an hour to eat a hamburger. But what Ray Kroc showed with the franchise is that when you have a bunch of franchisees that aren't serving customers and they can just work on the business all day long, they can work all day long to make it faster, easier, higher quality, lower cost, more succinct. And then he opened up McDonald's, where he took that hour-long appointment to eat a hamburger fry. Think of Fonzie and Happy Days. That was the only place you get a hamburger. And he reduced it to 3 minutes. So a lot of my dentist friends that really make a lot of money in real estate, they quickly bought up about a half dozen properties so that they could have a full-time person that just worked the business, whether it was a maintenance issue, collecting the rent, marketing, buying, selling. So we call that scale. And the franchises, they ushered in a book called what was that? What was the book that explained the franchises? The E-Myth. The E-Myth the E-Myth. And now we're seeing that in dentistry, where a bunch of DSOs Like Mark Costas, I guess, he's a DSO too. He owns a dozen offices.
Mm-hmm.
But when someone like Mark Costas owns a dozen offices, well, he's not doing root canals, fillings, and crowns 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. He can hire other people to do that. And so he's got the scale. And the reason he's a master operator is because you only manage people, time, and money. And he's putting all of his time on management. And that's what Ray Kroc taught the whole world, is that, mom and dad have owned this hamburger place for 40 years. It's never dawned on them that every time you order a hamburger, you shouldn't have to walk all the way back to the freezer, open it up, and get out a raw patty. A drive-through is 60% of their sales. Ray Kroc used to always say to these people complaining, "You bankrupted my business." He's like, well, how did you sell hamburgers here for 40 years and not know that 6 out of 10 of your customers didn't even want to get out of their car? Hell, my dad bought a Sonic drive-in franchise because he knew people didn't want to get out of their car. Mm-hmm. And so when you're so busy making food or dentistry or plumbing or roofing that you can't have time to work on your business, it's just it's not good. So I would recommend that if real estate was going to be a large component, that it's just like learning how to swim. You can't learn how to swim with only 1 foot in the water. I would recommend getting enough scale so that they can have a management team. Same thing with dental offices. I go into small towns that only has 5,000 people, and it'll have probably 10 dentists. But that one dentist who decided to get another dental office on the other side of town. Mm-hmm. So now he's got one on north, south, maybe east and west. Now he has a full-time scale management team. He's got a full-time office manager, HR, marketing, legal, whatever. He's got a 3 or 4 person team that's not busy seating patients and making appointments and billing your insurance. He has so if you scale large enough, at least a half dozen units. In real estate, at least 2 offices. I just told another dentist yesterday. I was having lunch yesterday with a dentist, and I told him, I said, your problem is this person that you said is your office manager. Mm-hmm. All she ever does is answer the phone, make appointments, see patients, put out fires. All she is she's doing work. She's not in management. She's not an operationalist. I told him, I think the only way you could solve your dental office problems is actually buy another dental office. So now you could take yourself and your team and your management team and actually just work on the business of dentistry, or in your case, the business of real estate, and not spending all day long doing the work that you need to do in real estate, plumbing, and dentistry.
Exactly. Yeah, the core structure business, like you mentioned, Gerber's book, The E-Myth. That's like the Bible for all small business people. Any entrepreneur should read that book, and that the E-Myth Revisited is equally just as good. I think it's an order of sales, including the Bible. No book's ever been out published in the Bible, but Think and Grow Rich is the next one, Napoleon Hill, and then right after that, I think Gerber's book is. If it's not up at number 3, it's in the top 5 or 10. It kind of fluctuates, but it's such a powerful concept that business structure. Once you have that in place, whether you own real estate and rent it out, or you have a dental practice and you help your clients and your customers, the core business structure has to be there for us in order for you to scale. So I really appreciate you bringing that to light, and which leads me to another thing. Is I realized with a lot of the folks that I've worked with, the ones that are even ultra successful, is they won't just buy like an individual stall type business or property, like a lot with one office and that's all it has. They would buy something like they maybe have 3 or 4 office spots, or maybe even a tiny strip mall, and rent out the other places to businesses that are somewhat related to that business. Maybe a pharmacy could go there, or some other related business that people would go to. If I'm going to the dentist, well, maybe I can go take care of, my children can go next door and take care of their tutorings. Bottom line is they would have multiple, we call them stalls, in that little strip mall that they would run out. That strip mall not only pays for their office space, it gives them a profit. It helps them build that passive income long term. But I wanted to ask you this. So you mentioned you came from Kansas, Woodstock, Kansas, moved down to Phoenix. So you've been how long have you been in Phoenix how long have you been in Phoenix, I guess? And if you could talk about the timing, let's talk about geography and timing, because I'm in Phoenix quite a bit. It's gone up and down over the last a couple of decades, but when it comes back, it always bounces back with a tremendous surge. Even though the dips were kind of painful, but you've seen a tremendous amount of growth there. So how, if you could talk about timing and also proximity, how has that affected your business plan or your model, or have you learned any lessons there? Did you adjust anything? Did your business even take a hit during the recession? Because people still need to go to the dentist. Those are the kind of things I'm looking. If you don't mind sharing, Dr. Farran, that would be great.
Yeah, I feel like I was, and just call me Howard.
Howard.
I feel like I was lucky because I graduated from high school in 1980, and that was the worst economy I'd ever seen in my life. I mean, 21% interest rates, double-digit inflation, unemployment. Graduated from dental school May of '87, and October of '87 was Black Monday. And then the longest expansion I saw was 94 to 2000. Then the internet bubble popped, the Y2K bubble popped, March 2000 disaster. And then 10 years ago, it was Lehman Brothers. So I think, I've seen it hit rock bottom 4 times. And it's just good because it makes you realize that what goes up comes down. It's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And I think opening up my dental office right after Black Monday it kept me to keep one eye on my customer and one eye on cost. But back to Phoenix, I was born in Wichita, Kansas, and I made a conscious decision to move 1,000 miles because of demographics. In Wichita, the population was pretty flat, and Phoenix, Maricopa County, Phoenix is in Maricopa County, and Maricopa County last year, 4th year in a row, was the #1 fastest growing county 4 years in a row. It netted 100,000 people. I was talking to a friend of mine in LA, and he says the growth in California is going to peak and start going down because it's too crowded. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? There's 38 million people in California, and you cross that Pacific, there's 1,300,000,000 in China. And guess where every person in China wants to live? Wherever they're making those Hollywood movies in California. Yeah. So I don't care when it goes down. Warren Buffett, when the stock market crashes, that's when he buys. Why do you think Warren Buffett right now is sitting on $100 billion in cash? Because it smells to me like another one of those recessions. I mean, nobody can predict the future. If anybody is predicting the future, they're completely insane. But it's happened in my life about every decade. And it's been a decade since the last one. And I'm sure it's going to happen again, but I don't care if it happens because I've lived through 4 of them. It's not that bad. It just means all the prices come down, so you get to buy everything half off. And I do feel sorry for the kids who graduated from dental school in 94. And from 94 to 2000, you could buy any stock, and it would double every couple of years. And they had their feet were not grounded on any type of reality. And when it crashed in March of 2000, about 80 dental offices went bankrupt. When Lehman Brothers hit again, another 80 dental offices crashed. So people do get too leveraged. They don't keep their eye on what if something goes wrong. And you got to play the long term. But the long term is Phoenix is going to continue to grow. You're right. People are still going to need dentistry. What happens in a recession is inferior goods do better. Instead of going to a $10 an hour, a $10 sit-down lunch, you go down to Taco Bell for $1. Instead of going to a bar and buying a $5 drink with an umbrella, you go to the store and you buy a 6-pack of beer. So inferior goods do better. So in dentistry, instead of a root canal, billet, and crown, you might get an extraction. Instead of implants and crowns, you might get a denture or partial. But it doesn't matter because when the economy comes back, if they don't like their denture or their partial, they'll upgrade later. So the main thing is to keep your customers for life, keep your employees for life, keep your family for life. And in bad times, they'll switch from luxury goods to inferior goods, but then they're still your customers when the economy comes back. And it always comes back within a year or two. Even the Great Depression was only 4 years long. I mean, 4 years, hell, dental school was 4 years long. It always come back. Just keep your eye on the long run. Be good to your people. Be good use of your time, and keep your eye on your numbers, and it's all going to take care of itself.
Yeah.
And by the way, you mentioned the E-Myth. Mm-hmm. Shout out to the E-Myth was written by Michael Gerber. He wrote the E-Myth Dentist along with Alan Kwong Hing. and Christopher Barrow, explaining how the E-Myth even works in dentistry. That's another great book to buy, is the E-Myth Dentist.
Okay.
And my book, Uncomplicated Business, it only has 51 reviews. They were all 5-star, and it has nothing to do with dentistry. Uncomplicated Business, all it takes is people, time, and money. When you read that book, you should not know that I'm a dentist, and it shouldn't matter if you're a wheat farmer, a dairy farmer, or own a plumbing business. I mean, business is business is business. Just get good at business. And if you get an A in business, it makes the art of your business, your craft, whether you're a cook or a dentist or a plumber, it makes your craft so much more fun because you're profitable, you're happy. Boys have toys. You can buy that fancy John Deere tractor that you really don't need, but you just really think is cool. Same thing with dentistry, whatever. But just get an A in business, and everything else is going to take care of itself.
I agree. You know, it's ironic because you and I are just about 1 year apart in age, and I've likewise been through 4 recessions. I anymore, I'm like, I don't want to sound callous, but I don't really get worried anymore. In the beginning, back in the late 80s, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a recession. The sky's falling. That's just all media. The fact is even in the Great Recession, yes, real estate led the recession, and it dropped on most places. But the fact is, you know, unemployment never really got all that high, not anything close to the big depression. And so majority of people still were either buying or renting. I mean, let's face it, in real estate, you either own your house you're in or you rent it. So either way you can profit as long as you know what the trend is. And real estate's easy to figure out because it's a slower moving commodity. But the biggest thing I learned though, and you kind of touched on this, you didn't say it exactly, is that you learn to expect these things. Expect the recession. It's just part of this life of business cycle. It's going to happen. So prepare for it and have some income coming in from a couple different streams. And I always thought real estate should be one of them. But I want to talk about your book here, but I know we're kind of getting close on time here. Uncomplicated Business. I'm going to get a copy of that because I'm intrigued myself. I want everybody listening to go out and pick it up. Can they get it on Amazon? And the caption is people, time, and money. But you know, and it's applicable to every business owner because, like we said in the beginning, the business of being in business has to be built and addressed, or whatever business you're in, product or service, is never going to grow. So if you could talk about your book, just give it a shameless plug because I think it's going to help a lot of people, Howard.
Well, you know, just Google uncomplicate business because uncomplicate's not a proper word. So it'll have the red squiggly line and it'll take you right to it. But, you know, I wrote that book, Uncomplicate Business, because I don't think it's difficult. And I want to switch back to your real estate real quick. You know what I learned on those downturns? That when in a downturn, all the prices come down in stocks and bonds and real estate. So it's a buying opportunity. And the first recession that I lived through, which was a Black Monday, real estate plummeted. So I picked up 4 properties. One of them I built my dental office on. Another one, I learned that the same reason the intelligence to buy is actually less intelligence required than the intelligence to know when to sell. I bought this one little 8-piece for this one little piece for $78,000. 1 year later, a friend of mine, John Artley, said, "I'll buy it from you for $150. You'll double your money." So I did. He hung on to it for 5 years and sold it for $2.5 million.
Wow.
And so I look back, the first time it fell, like I say, bought 4 properties, kept one for my dental office, sold the other 3, doubled my money on all 3 of those. But oh my God, do I wish I would have kept those and not doubled my money. So, you know, it's like you buy a stock for 10, it doubles to 20. Warren Buffett doesn't trade stocks. He says, if I wanted to buy your company a year ago, why do I not want to own it today? He buys and holds. And the first lesson I learned as a young little 25-year-old dentist is, oh my God. I mean, I used to get nauseous when I drove by that 7 acres and think, oh my God, I could have had I could have $2.5 million in cash if I just would have hung on to that little I think it was $78,000, double my money. And then he 10x'd it. So buying and selling. And then the other thing I want to say about real estate is humans are emotional. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know what I think the best reason is that people should buy real estate, especially the house, instead of renting their house, is because it's a forced savings account. I think people are going to spend all the money they make plus all the money they can borrow on credit cards and bank. You're going to spend it all, just like your government. I mean, your government is 1 year in debt. I mean, it's $19 trillion of money they already spent. It's 100% of GDP. Well, the government is made up of people, and people are your government. And when you buy a real estate property and you have to make that monthly payment, you go, oh my God, I got to spend that $2,000. Well, guess what? If you didn't have to spend that $2,000, you would have jumped in an airplane and flown to some dental course that's $3,500 a weekend and stayed in a resort. You're going to spend all your money anyway. So why not force yourself to have to make payments and investments? So now after you make your investment payment, you're like, oh my gosh, I had $4,000 and I just dropped $2,800 of it on my payment. Looks like instead of going to Hawaii for vacation, we're just going to go to the lake and camp out and fish and grill burgers and dogs. So I think humans are very emotional, and I think investments are a forced income. And I'll give you a proof of that. Ask any of your employees how much they make every paycheck. They'll always tell you the net amount. They never know what their gross amount was. They never know what the FICA matching was. If they just say, oh, I net $1,500 every 2 weeks, they have no idea what the gross amount is. So that's how you got to play your own mind. You get yourself locked into a house payment, you're going to pay that house payment. So it locks you in. If you own a couple of rental properties, you're not going to go bankrupt. You're going to pay your mortgage. And after you pay your mortgage, you pay your investment. It's a forced savings account. So now you don't go out and do something ridiculous with your money, like go to Home Depot and remodel your whole bathroom, which is just absolutely perfect the way it is right now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. When something you mentioned a while back, you made me think about this. Over the years, I've been in thousands of transactions, and hundreds of units now. And the ones that I did sell years ago, I very rarely did I really regret something I bought. But most cases, whenever I sold something years later, I'd look back at how much I appreciated. I'm like, gee, I wish I had all of that.
Yeah.
So, but
and one last thing, I'm stealing a lot of quotes from Warren Buffett because I grew up in Wichita. I went to Creighton in Omaha, Nebraska, and that guy was so nice back in 1980. He came out and lectured to our business class because he was good friends with the business dean at Creighton. But the bottom line is, he said that the reason he was in stocks because he said, bottom line is the stock market is America, and I'm not voting against America. And when you don't want to buy real estate, when you buy real estate, you know what you're buying a share of? The human race. Yeah. And there's only one species of Homo left. It's Homo sapien. And when you don't buy real estate, you're betting against the human race. And the human race is, the only person that competes with humans on the animal planet is ants. Humans and ants have the same amount of mass. And if you really think ants are going away, and that 5 years from now, there's not going to be any ants or any humans, you're completely out of your mind. So when you buy a share of stock in the NYSE or NASDAQ, you're buying a share of America. And when you buy a piece of earth, you're buying a share of the human race. And the human race is the most durable animal that's ever lived, maybe second only to the ant. But my gosh, ants and humans are going to be here for another 1,000,000 years. So I would buy up any anthill you can find, and 1,000,000 years from now, you're going to find ants crawling around it.
Well, I love it. And then another thing Warren Buffett said, too, is one of my favorite heroes is, when the bottom of the last recession, he was interviewing, he said, if I could right now, I'd buy 100 million homes. And he didn't actually do that, but what he did do is he bought Prudential Real Estate and now that's part of the Berkshire Hathaway ownership group. So in any case, he's a great man with his famous saying, when the herd goes left, we should go right. I love the example. I love the models you gave today and and your expertise and your guidance. And I think I speak for a lot of people, Howard, when I say thank you for taking your precious time to do this. But I want to go back real quick. I want to make sure people know how to Google Uncomplicate Business. And is there a website people can go to? I'm going to share this with a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah. You can go to my website, howardfarran.com. It's Farran, Farran, howardfarran.com, or
Okay.
just Google Uncomplicate Business. And I just want to say one last thing.
Yes,
I know
sir.
we're on double overtime, but I do know several dentists
Mm-hmm.
who had a very, very big luxury house. And instead of, they emotionally couldn't sell their house, but they knew they needed to downsize. And guess what they did? They downsized their house,
Mm-hmm.
but they emotionally couldn't sell their mansion. And now it's signed up on Airbnb, and they rent out their mansion for a weekend for $1,500, $2,000, all the, especially if you live someplace anywhere nice.
Yeah.
And I know I know many dentists who are killing it with Airbnb. Are you finding that? And now there's
Oh, yeah.
bookings.com. So that Airbnb, and when I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal that the rate of hotel occupancy
Mm-hmm.
has been going down every year since Airbnb came out,
Yeah.
because so many people are doing this. And man, gosh, if you got a house in LA or San Fran, or you got a house where somebody wants to go, like Phoenix, Arizona, the bigger the house, the more rare it is. And you would not believe what you can rent that thing out. A lot of these dentists can rent their house out for a mortgage payment on just 2 weekends a month.
Yeah, it's not only huge now, and it's not going anywhere. I mean, there are localities trying to implement these local laws and codes to block or stop Airbnb. But the challenge with them is people like me who travel a lot, and I've always been a hotel guy with brand name Marriott. But the fact is I always seek out Airbnb now because I can be in a home on the water, have a home cooked meal for breakfast, and not be stuck with that hotel breakfast. So as long as people, like you said, human beings, we're the ants. As long as we're around and we want Airbnb, that business is not going to keep growing. And I'll tell you something else, Howard. It started in your area is non-medical assisted living. Non-medical assisted living. It's becoming the next Airbnb as far as the next wave of strategies for owning real estate. And I've seen a lot of people having success with it. It's not as heavily regulated, and there's a need for it. There's a part of the consumer, the part of the human races that are in that age group where they don't want to be in a nursing home. They don't want to be in a nursing home. They don't need to be in a nursing home. They want to be free, yet they don't want to cut grass and fix stuff. They want to be in a home, just like I described with Airbnb, with other people. They can come and go and hike and bike and do all kinds of fun stuff. So the people who own those homes are cashing. I mean, renting these rooms for $3,000 a month, and they don't have to have any medical facility meet any medical requirements there. So there's other options. So I want everybody to understand it when you're listening to this, guys. Don't just think traditional flipping and owning small duplexes. You can just do that stuff. I've done tons of it. But the fact is the human race evolves, and so does business. And what Howard just mentioned, Airbnb, is here to stay. And I think non-medical assisted living is you're going to see grow tremendously also in the next few years. So yeah. Hey, well, hey Howard, this has been a lot of fun, but this has been one of my favorite ones actually. I know this is still being recorded, but I just want everybody to know that go to the website, get the book. When I'm out in Phoenix, I'm going to look you up, and maybe you and Mark and I can go grab a bite to eat or something when I'm out there.
Let's do it. You, me, and Mark at lunch. That would be joy.
Yeah,
let's do it. Let's absolutely do it.
I'll have my notepad and pen and pencil because I've got a feeling I can learn from you guys as much as anybody could ever learn from me. So.
All right.
Well, listen.
All right. Well, it was an honor to be on your show. Thank you so much for having me be on your show.
You're welcome, Howard. Hang on just 1 second. And everybody listening, God bless you and your families. I will see you on the path of prosperity. Go to myinvestmentservices.com. The members area, click on that. See what it's all about. Join up and subscribe to the podcast if you haven't yet. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. You guys take care and God bless.